You're listening to Stimulus Tech Talk, a conversation-based podcast created by Stimulus Technologies that covers a range of topics related to business and technology.
Welcome to a Stimulus Tech Talk. I am Sherry Lipp, Marketing Manager here at Stimulus Technologies, and I am here as usual with our CEO, Nathan Whittacre. And today we are going to be talking a little bit about Cybersecurity Awareness Month, which is what October is. Hello, Nathan.
Hi, Sherry, and hi, everybody. It's great to be here, as always.
So I figured this was a good time, since it is October, to talk about what Cybersecurity Awareness Month is and what maybe businesses can do to recognize it. Because I see it's a kind of a broad topic, and I think probably people hear it, but they don't really know if there's anything they can do for it.
Well, it's interesting that Cybersecurity Awareness Month coincides with Halloween. So recognizing all the ghosts and goblins that are out there in the internets and digital worlds. It's definitely a time that it's definitely not a thing that we just do once a year, but it's a time that we can recognize the threat that it is to our businesses, of hacking and ransomware and all these events that could happen to take down our businesses. And I think just you tuning in today as a first start of it is just recognizing that there is a threat to our companies and talking to our employees about it. So, it's a good opportunity if you're a business owner, CEO, general manager, whatever your title is inside the company, bring it up with your team, that they need to be, recognizing the threats that are out there and working towards mitigating those. I would also say, if there's something you can do, we have a lot of topics we've talked about on this podcast or our webinars, our blogs. If there's something you can do inside your company, just take one thing that you can improve on, in one area you can improve on, that would be a good start. It's just, you can't go from unsecure to completely secure in one day. So it takes little incremental changes over time. And so if you could do something this month towards that, of improving your cybersecurity inside your company, I think that's a good start too.
And what kinds of things do you think employers could do with employees as kind of like a month-long activity or activities to do?
Well, there's certainly a lot of training, I think, would be an option. One of the things that we do as a company, if you're at all interested, we do have weekly security emails that go out, just aware of different threats that are out there. So if you're interested in signing up for one of those, you can visit our website and just fill out a contact form and say that you want to sign up for the weekly tips. That's a good way. Get some of your employees on there and share those with your team. You could do, if you have trainings that you do with your team or monthly meetings, weekly huddles, whatever it may be, maybe share one of our webinars or our podcasts that we talk about cybersecurity with your team. I think training is really the biggest thing that we should be doing inside our companies this month, is just, take note, identify that the threats are out there, maybe talk about some case studies, look at some big ones out there, like MGM here in Las Vegas was a big issue recently. So, just look at different threats that are out there. And, if you're interested in engaging with us, we're happy to give you some materials that you can share with your team.
And so obviously we want to, like you said, want to be aware of cybersecurity all the time, but what kind of things do you think businesses should do, on a yearly basis, kind of bring this front of mind, like an audit, or, what should they be thinking about maybe on a yearly basis that they could schedule around this time?
So, a few things that are an annual basis should be done inside a business. You should have an annual cybersecurity assessment done on your company. And that's a both internal and external test of your defenses and what's going on. And what happens in cybersecurity is things change year over year. So maybe what you were doing last year is not sufficient than what you need this year. And so having that security audit done is a good way to see where you're at. The other thing is review your insurance policies. Usually you have to renew your insurance annually, and it would be a good time to call your broker up and say, has anything changed with our cyber insurance, and should we implement or increase our cyber liability or employee crime policies, and see where we need to do to improve those. The other thing is a lot of companies I find have to fill out these forms for their insurance companies to get that type of insurance. And it would be a good place to review that with your insurance company, along with your IT professionals and security professionals, to make sure that the things that are required of you as a company to have implemented to get that insurance are in place. And I think finally, kind of along those same lines, is making sure you're compliant with any federal, state, or local regulations related to IT security or cybersecurity. So maybe talk to whoever is handling your compliance, whether it's your IT company, your security company, or a law firm or something like that, is just to take a review your state of compliance and making sure that you don't have any holes as things have changed also with that. Because compliance and cybersecurity do go hand in hand. They're this very similar in a lot of people's minds, but being compliant doesn't mean that you're secure, and being secure doesn't mean you're compliant. But a lot of compliance dictates the things that you have to do on the security side, and maybe additional things too. So doing both of those, I think, dramatically improves your security posture.
And what kind of things encompass? We just did, the webinar on IT asset management. Is that, and that's like you talked about that being a part of compliance, and where does that fit in cybersecurity? Kind of, a little brief overview of what that is.
Yeah, so I often say that you can't protect what you don't know you have. And so doing a audit of your IT assets, everything from your laptops and desktops all the way to your servers, network infrastructure, everything that you have related to IT is the first building block to developing a cybersecurity plan or a security plan. And then that ties into compliance too. So doing an inventory of all your infrastructure, seeing what's out of date, not out of date, and then coming up with a plan of anything that is antiquated. Create a hardware life cycle that you're replacing things that should be replaced. It might be out of date, or you're not getting security patches anymore for software, and do a refresh. So this would be kind of coinciding with developing an annual budget too. Once you've done that inventory, it gives you an opportunity to sit down and say, okay, next year, according to our hardware life cycle, we probably need to replace 8 computers and a server. So you can put that in your budget for next year, so it's not a surprise in March or June that you need to fix that before you can be compliant again. That you're forecasting that and planning for that for the next year, so you have that in your budget. So that's really, IT asset management is the building block, because it gives you an idea of what you need to do and what you need to protect. So it's a good thing to do, and also kind of coincides with annual budgeting for the end of the year.
Yeah. And yeah, like I said, we do have a presentation on that week. You can still access if you're listening. If you're interested in IT asset management, we actually have presentations, probably either a podcast or a webinar, on all the subjects we're touching on here today, because this is a broad overview of where you can figure out what you want to do as you're putting cybersecurity front of mind. But where can people go to learn about kind of the latest threats?
So we have our blog that we often talk about, blog.stimulustech.com. A lot of the threats that are out there. If you want to get into the nitty gritty, there's a lot of websites that post what vulnerabilities are out there. Really, it's security professionals that are looking at those. I think the best thing to do is look at the resources that we have, or other experts in the industry that are watching what's going on in the industry and summarizing and putting the information out there, because there is a lot of noise. We have companies that we work with that are providing us as a company a lot of information. And the immediate threats that are out there, if there's what we call like a 0-day threat, which means something that there's a vulnerability in it, let's say Windows or Mac OS or a certain product that has not been patched yet, that doesn't have a fix. That's called a 0-day vulnerability, that there's no fix for this threat. And so we'll put those out there. If you want to join our mailing list, we send that information out when those occur, so you can know, hey, I don't want to use Adobe for this today, or I need to make sure that I stop using whatever version of Chrome that you might be using. There's vulnerabilities that come out periodically that are really big threats, and we'll put those notices out. I also mentioned at the beginning, we have our weekly tech tips. We put some information out on that. And then finally, we do have an inexpensive product that we offer of security training. So this is an annual security training that you can get for your team. It's an annual assessment that your team has to take. And then they also get weekly micro trainings that are about 5-minute videos every week with a little quiz at the end. And it's a good update for what trends are going on. And it's really an inexpensive training option for your team. There's a lot of companies that put it out. We have it available just because I think that's an essential component of cybersecurity. It's just bringing that awareness. Hey, you're on this podcast, you're doing it. We can give you some resources to help your team too.
All right. And so what, where is the line when we're talk a lot about training, and then we have, if you have cybersecurity as a service, monitoring, where is the line between what an employee or employer needs to learn as opposed to what the company, your service provider, is taking care of?
That's a good question. So, the threats are multifaceted, right? And employees aren't going to be able to protect against all threats, nor is software going to protect against all threats. We often talk about, cybersecurity is a layered approach. You have to have multiple layers. You can't just, have one single system that is protecting everything. And so where the line delineates is not a clear line. They kind of overlap each other. You have to have your software that's really taking care of 99% of things that are going on, but you can't have your team just blatantly jumping in the deep end of the pool every time they want and can't swim and expecting the lifeguard to come and save them. So I don't know if that's a good analogy. I just made it up on the spot, but really that's what the expectation of, the software always saving you and you can do whatever you want. You have to be a partner with the software and make sure that we have the right guardrails set up for the employees, but also, you're not doing stuff that is going to cause damage to the network, because we all make mistakes. I'll just give an example. The other day, I got an email from somebody that I actually interface with periodically. They're a vendor, and the email, I was expecting some contracts coming in. You have those DocuSigns, Adobe Signs that come in all the time, and this vendor emailed me. I wasn't particularly expecting a contract from them, but it looked like a contract renewal. So I clicked on the link. The link was a valid domain. It was for adobe.com, so it was a valid domain, but it was a shared PDF, and then had some additional links in the PDF. And immediately I recognized that it was some hacker that had hacked the vendor's email account that was sending out these links. The PDF was fine, but if I had clicked any additional links in that PDF, it could have caused some damage. Ironically, I got an alert later in the day that told me I clicked something that I shouldn't have, which is good. I started out, I shouldn't have probably clicked it, but I did. And then once I recognized that, hey, this isn't valid, this isn't something I asked for or was expecting, then I immediately shut it down. But my tool also notified my team that there was something wrong too. thank goodness I didn't go any further. And then the software caught it on the back end too. So, even if you're doing everything right, you're checking domains, it all looks right, the sender looks okay, it's not coming from malicious senders. Even IT security experts can make mistakes too, or be socially engineered to do something they shouldn't do, even because a lot of the hackers are doing it perfectly. So it's a kind of a balance between the two, that the software has to take over, even if the humans make some mistakes, and vice versa. I caught that there was something wrong going on with that, with those links and that document that was sent to me. So it's the document was valid, but the links inside the document were wrong. So there's just always things that are weird that are going on, new things that learn all the time, and that's why there's has to be a partnership between the software and
Yeah,
email.
definitely. Yeah, definitely email is a big one and clicking links. And one thing I learned or was reminded of from the micro training that you just mentioned was not to click even the unsubscribe button on an email that's bad. So, and a lot of people might think, well, I'm going to get rid of it and not have them send me anything before without thinking about like the whole thing is all links are bad in certain
Mhm.
emails. So definitely, if you don't know you're doing it wrong, then you don't know you're doing it wrong. Sometimes, so training is important.
Absolutely, absolutely, and things change all the time. The attacks are, um, getting better each day, and they're definitely. I think that's a great example that you got to be careful about everything you do, and sometimes we make mistakes. Sometimes we do things that we shouldn't do, and that's why you got to have everything to protect you.
Yeah. Yeah. Any final thoughts on the scary Cybersecurity Awareness Month for October?
Well, I guess I want to see if there's any, send us links if there's any great costumes related to hackers. If anybody running around in the anonymous, the hoodie with the funny anonymous face. I don't know if you guys are dressing up. That might be the scariest for businesses. Certainly the scariest costume out there. But
Yeah.
just obviously, it's 24/7. We have to be vigilant, but it's a good reminder once a year to take a look at those things and just review where you're at inside your company, and make a commitment to change at least one thing to improve inside your company.
All right. Well, if only the hackers were really dressed like that all the time, we could
Yeah,
find them.
exactly. They are not, but fortunately.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks so much, Nathan, and happy Cybersecurity Awareness Month, everybody.
Thanks, Sherry, and thanks everybody for joining us today.